Welcome to Work from the Inside Out, a podcast that highlights real-life stories, practical strategies, and best practices for transitioning your career from unhappiness and dissatisfaction to fulfillment, meaning, and joy. Now here is your host, career and executive coach, Tammy Guler-Loeb.
Hey, everybody. I am so delighted to introduce today's guest, Octavia Goredema. Octavia is a career coach and the founder of 2010 Agency. Her mission is to help underrepresented professionals advance their careers. Octavia is the author of Prep, Push, Pivot, Essential Career Strategies for Underrepresented Women, published by Wiley. Originally from England, Octavia was appointed a member of the Order of the British Empire by the Queen in recognition of her work. Octavia is a fellow of the Royal Society of Arts, where she leads the Gender Equity Network in the United States. You can learn more about Octavia's work at octaviagoredema.com, and we will, of course, have all of that in the show notes. Octavia, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much, Tammy.
It is such a treat to have you here. As you know, on Work from the Inside Out, we like to begin at the beginning. And your beginning started in England, I'm assuming. Is that correct?
That is correct. I'm speaking to you now in Los Angeles, so
Yes.
5,000 miles away. My story did begin in England. I was born in Nottingham, which is in the East Midlands in England. And my earliest memories really centered on stories, and those stories were in books. I was the quintessential bookworm, the kid that always had her nose stuck in a book. And the stories that I still remember so vividly to this day, it's such a joy. My daughters are a little older than I was at that point now, but they enjoyed those stories too. And so it's been such a full circle moment to watch my girls become such avid readers. But for me, when I was little, the stories that I loved didn't just capture my imagination, but there was often characters that felt like they were maybe lonely and misunderstood and not really fully appreciated and valued. And, you know, those stories really resonated with me in terms of the arcs that they overcame and the things that they did, or the skills that they found that they had, or the journeys that they embarked upon. And I remember one day I finished a book really fast and I was like flicking through it again. And I noticed at the very front something I hadn't really paid attention to before. And that was the name of the publishing company, the book. And in this case, it was Penguin, which is now Penguin Random House. And they had an address in London, Penguin. And I remember I wrote to them and asked, how do you become an author?
Oh, my goodness. How old were you when you did that?
I don't even remember exactly how old I was. I probably was 7 or 8, maybe.
Oh, wow.
And so I wrote this letter with this question, and they wrote me back, Tammy. They actually wrote me back, like a letter typed and everything. And mine was this little handwritten thing. And I was so blown away that someone wrote back to me. And I kept that letter in its envelope. My bookcase, I had a bookcase that was above my bed as well as a main bookcase. And I kept it on the smaller bookshelf that was right above my bed for years, because I just thought it was the most incredible thing. And I don't have that letter anymore. I've moved many times since I was a child. And so somewhere that letter might be tucked in a box somewhere.
So.
But for the longest time, it was my most prized possession. And to actually eventually become an author many decades later, really felt very poignant and special to me.
I bet. Do you remember what the letter said?
I do remember that it kind of explained that you you come up with your story and you submit it. I don't remember the mechanics of the details that it shared, and I wish I had it now because I could compare it perhaps to what I ended up doing. But that said, Octavia back then was convinced she was going to be a fiction writer, and more specifically a children's book writer, because those were the books that I loved at that moment in my life. But it represented more than just explaining to me how it worked. It was the fact that someone actually had taken the time to respond and to share with me, almost as if I was an adult asking the question when very clearly I wasn't. And that in itself just was mind-blowing to me.
Yeah. Well, that's really special.
Yes, it was.
So did you start writing at any point? Did you actually try to do some writing?
When I was that age, I was writing constantly, not necessarily thinking, I'm going to submit this to Penguin. I wasn't actually ready to even begin to think that way. I was just more fascinated about the fact that, oh my gosh, people are authors and this is how they perhaps did it. I just loved stories. But here's the thing. Over the years that passed, I started to lose my confidence. I started to second guess myself, not just in terms of being an author, but in so many ways. I think if I look back on it, I was a really bright kid and I went to a very, very good school where you had to take an entrance exam and then be chosen as one of the top percentage to be admitted and to receive a place. And so all of a sudden I was with hundreds and hundreds of really, 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 really smart kids. And that could work in two ways. That could actually be an accelerant for you in terms of being, oh my gosh, I'm in such a fantastic environment. I am thriving. Or in my case, it actually held me back a little bit, I think. Maybe not in a way that was even tangible to anyone else because I was getting good grades and doing what I needed to do, but it really affected my confidence a lot. And maybe just other things too, just growing up and navigating so much. And I definitely started to put ceilings on myself in lots of ways. And writing was one of them. And so I never lost my love of books. I never lost my love of reading. But I actually, for the longest time, assumed that being an author was something that was out of reach for me.
Oh, wow. But it was still on your mind, it sounds like.
Yes, it was. And there came a point when I just decided I was going to try and see what happened if I just didn't give up.
Right. Well, and we know what happened because we just talked about your book. But I am curious about how you evolved towards that because there were many years in between. So you never lost your love of books, but you did lose some of your confidence in your ability to write or your ability or your future as an author. At least it's in your younger years. Did you go on to university? Were you?
I did.
Yeah.
I went to university, but I almost didn't.
Really?
Because that same trait of I don't know if I'm good enough. Yes, stopped me from applying. So when all my friends were preparing their applications, I decided I wasn't going to apply. My mother was furious, but I decided. And fortunately, within maybe 2 or so months, I had a change of heart. And so I submitted what was considered to be a late application, but I was still in my final year at the equivalent of high school in England. And to my great surprise, I got offers, multiple offers. And what was my first choice, which was the University of Leicester, was the university I attended. And I studied politics and history, a joint honours degree. If you'd have told Octavia that she would go to her first choice university to pursue the 2 subjects that were captivating her the most, if you told me that when I was deciding I wasn't good enough, I wouldn't have believed it. That's how much of a ceiling I'd put on top of myself. Wow. Something that was easily attainable for me fell out of reach. And so going to university really was a catalyst for a lot of things. I thoroughly enjoyed my course. I loved the city that I moved to. From there, because I secured my degree, I knew I'd secured my degree a little earlier than my final exam. So I was able to look up, and I was able to think about what I wanted to do next. But within that, I remember going to see a career counselor on campus and saying, well, I really always wanted to be a writer or a journalist, but I don't think I'm good enough. What do you think I should do? And that person said to me, have you heard of public relations? And I was like, nope. But guess what, Tammy? That's what I did. I went and I found out about this industry and this career path. And because someone else suggested that it could be a good fit for me, that's what I did. And so the first career that I embarked on, and was my career for a very long time, was I got work experience, first of all, the equivalent of an internship in a public relations firm. And then in my final year at university, I started applying. I started applying to firms locally to me, just speculatively. And then I just by chance saw a position advertised, and you don't see many entry-level positions advertised, or at least you didn't at that time, just because the ads cost probably a fifth of what the total salary was, to be honest. It just wasn't common to see entry-level positions advertised in newspapers because there wasn't the internet then and internet advertising. And so I saw a position advertised in London, and I applied for it, and I got it.
Wow.
But when I got off the offer, I second guessed that. I was like,
Really?
Yes. Should I move to London? I just don't know.
Hard on yourself.
I was so hard on myself. And luckily I had a friend, Simone. She's still such a good friend to me to this day. And she told me very clearly, you would be crazy not to take this opportunity. And so I took it. And that really was a catalyst, because I started to build my career in London. And from there, I transferred with a company that I worked with to their Los Angeles office. And that's what brought me to the United States. And now this is my home. I'm now a dual US, UK citizen.
Oh, wow. So you stayed in the field of public relations or communications?
Yes, for a very long time. Yes, for a very, very long time. I started my career in London, started to work my way up the ladder. I ended up within a few years working at the largest consumer PR agency in London, with some of the most exciting work that I did in my entire PR career. It was fantastic. Really? And it was during that time that I met my husband, and he was told he had to move to the United States with his job. And so we were long distance for quite a while. And eventually he wasn't happy where he'd been sent, which was Detroit. And he wanted to go to California because he'd worked in California before we were together. So he was able to arrange a transfer of his own to Southern California. And when he did that, he said to me, Octavia, will you come? And of course, you can guess what my answer was, Tammy. It was no. But it's just, no, I'm not doing that. Well, my husband's very persuasive, and he wasn't my husband then. He was my boyfriend, but he was very persuasive, and he didn't take no for an answer.
Wow.
And so he said, why don't you ask? Why don't you ask for a transfer to the Los Angeles office? I was like, they're not going to give that to me. Well, I did ask, and they did give it to me. And that's what brought me here.
Wow. So that brought you to Los Angeles.
Yes.
And your boyfriend, of course.
Yes.
Your now husband. Yes. But what you're doing now is quite different.
Yes, it really is.
What were there things that, and I was also intrigued by what you studied at university too, and wondering if some of that had an influence in some way in terms of some of the things that you're doing today.
It certainly, my politics degree certainly impacts a lot of things that I do in terms of my own work. I'm very passionate about politics, and I'm a real advocate for democracy. In terms of my work, I took a long time to invest in my career and build in my career, and I was building the wrong thing.
Say more about that.
And so the seeds were sown pretty early, but I didn't realize them. So I was pursuing something that someone else had recommended to me, and I was pursuing it wholeheartedly. I I did an internship. I applied for jobs. I worked really hard at my jobs. I made strategic moves. I learned how to negotiate my salary. I learned how to lead teams. And I remember at one point, one of my bosses turning to me and saying, he goes, "You're the best I have on this team. You're the best, but you are not passionate about what you do."
Interesting.
Oh, and Tammy, I was furious. I was like, how dare he say that to me? That's not true. And, I decided I was going to do even more to show that. But he saw something in me before I even really, really acknowledged it in myself. And it was after I moved to the United States, I was working really, really, really hard. But it was never really fully aligned with what my purpose was. And I didn't know what my purpose was. So there was a gap and I didn't know how to fill it. And over time, I started to do more and more additional things. And I didn't realize I was filling my purpose, but I was really interested in mentoring and what it takes to advance your career. And, and I started an organization called the 2010 Club, which was about connecting with Black women in business. And I moved back to London for a couple of years, again, with my husband's work. And that's when I started doing that work. And I started writing about professional development and sharing people's stories about how they had found their purpose, all while still trying to figure out mine. And it was many years later when I was once again in a job that looked great from the outside, building my career in public relations, but not really doing what I was meant to be doing, that I discovered by chance the person who would become a coach to me. I didn't even know coaching. Well, I'd heard of it, but it wasn't something that was in my frame of reference. None of my friends had been coached. I wasn't aware of any of my coworkers who had been coached. I didn't have any immediate direct connection to coaching at all. Until I met the person who became my coach. And it was such a transformative experience. And around that time, I'd been writing about career development for quite a while on my own blog. I'd started writing for Black Enterprise, interviewing other people. And out of nowhere, a company reached out and said to me, "Hey, we're doing this national campaign and we're looking for a career coach to be the spokesperson for it, and we want you to do that." And I wasn't even a career coach. I was writing about these topics. Really
interesting. Out of absolutely nowhere.
Out of absolutely nowhere. And this was at exactly the same time that I was also being coached for the first time. And I was just like, my goodness, this is really interesting. What's happening here? And I made the decision that I wanted to learn more about this. And so I started a training course to become a coach. And the very first thing it said, it wasn't to read these textbooks or to understand these theories. The very first thing it said after the initial lessons were, okay, we want you to start applying what we're showing you and start coaching 5 people.
Right.
And I was like, wait, what?
Yeah, that's what my coaching program did. They said, "You are a coach now." And it's like, wait a minute, I'm not. I just started this program. What are you talking about?
Exactly. That's exactly how I felt. Now, fortunately, because I had my own website where I was sharing so much, I was able to say, hey, would anyone like to do some complimentary coaching? If so, you can sign up here. And that's how I found the first people that I coached. And it was such an incredible experience. I just knew that I had to do this. I just knew. And so I quit the job that I had and I went all in terms of building a coaching practice. And as a Black woman, it was also just really important to me to have the awareness of what the career journeys are like for underrepresented professionals who are looking to build their careers. I had witnessed firsthand what it feels like to be an only or one of very few. And also the stats. When you are looking, at leadership, there's a cliff. We're losing people. And it's not just about who you hire and who you bring in, but how do we make sure that people are supported on their journeys and continue to have opportunities to grow and push further and faster. And so my company, 2010 Agency, we work with an array of companies to support their underrepresented professionals. Sometimes that's through one-on-one coaching engagements. More often than not, though, it's through leadership cohorts or group coaching or much bigger workshops that we deliver that are career development focused. And while doing that, I love doing that work, but I also recognize not many companies are able to provide that level of support. Most companies can't. And so I wanted to create a resource that could help someone who doesn't have access to a budget for professional development that she can leverage how she chooses or can't tap in to a 6-month coaching program. And so that was what made the full circle goal of me always wanting to be an author, but wanting to create a career coaching resource for underrepresented women. And that's what led me on the journey to write my book, Prep, Push, Pivot.
I see. I see all the connectors now. Before we go there, though, I'm dying to know. So you created the 2010 club in London. What's 2010? What's the meaning behind that?
So the year was 2010, and I went. It was, but the name was written out. But it's a great question because I just knew at that moment it was a new decade, and I just felt it was going to be a new chapter for me. I didn't know how or when, but what ignited me to create what began as just a circle of women was I went to a conference in London, and it was free. I can't remember, some business organization had promoted it, but here was the thing. It offered childcare, and I had a baby, and I was like, wait, I can take my baby and go to this conference and it's free? Amazing. I'm there. Yeah. And so I took my eldest, who was so tiny then, and I was sat at the table. I was so happy to be there, and I'd have to get up and go nurse her, come back. I was just so happy to be there. And the women that I was sat with, I just looked at them and I was like, would you be open to meeting again? And they're like, sure thing. And so literally from that one day, the 2010 Club was born. It didn't even have a name. I just wanted to have a mechanism to connect with other women. And what that ended up becoming was we provided peer-to-peer support to one another. It was for Black women who were building their businesses, navigating their next steps. Many of them, almost all of them, were making a pivot of some form. We started doing mentoring programs in schools. And that was the work that resulted in me getting the title that I ended up receiving from the Queen, and that you referenced in the introduction. Yes. Wow.
Yes. So how did that, I was curious about that. So that, did the palace just call you one day and say, hey, we want to do this thing with you?
Actually, yes, that is what happened. Because
this is so different, from anything that would ever happen in this country. So I'm just curious how that came about.
That's exactly how it happened, because I was nominated, but I didn't know. You don't know if you've been nominated. I had no idea that I had been nominated. And after I had been nominated and you're vetted and you have no idea you're being vetted, they then reach out to let you know in confidence, you are being nominated for this title. Will you accept it? Except they couldn't get hold of me because I moved back to Los Angeles.
Oh, wow.
So they'd written to me, because I'd spent 3 years back in London. So they'd written to me at my last London address. I never got the letter. And then I received a voicemail. And it was saying that the Cabinet Office, and this is at number 10 Downing Street, the Cabinet Office was trying to get in touch with me. I was like, oh no, what have we done?
What have I done? Of course, that was the first thing you thought of, right?
And so when I called back, they wanted to verify that I was who I was, first of all, who I said I was. And then they told me over the phone and said, do you have an email address? We'll send a PDF of the letter to your email. And then I looked at the letter and just stared at it forever, just in complete shock. And so yes, it was a complete surprise.
Wow. So I guess the ceiling that you kept trying to put on yourself lifted, huh?
Yes. Eventually I realized I kept moving through what I thought the ceilings were. And eventually I realized that there's always going to be challenges, and there's always going to be unknowns, and there's always going to be things you want that might feel out of reach, and there might be things that you reach for and don't get.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
But it's what you do next that really matters the most. And you can't wait for someone to say, Octavia, you'd be good at that. Or, hey, Octavia, have you thought of this? Now, it's great if people do that, and it's great if they are supportive and encouraging and have an idea that is fantastic for you. But often we have to make that bet on ourselves before anything is even tangible to anyone else. You know it, Tammy, from writing a book. Before there was a book that someone could buy, and you know it as an author yourself, you have an idea, and you have an idea that you have to see through. And maybe you know people who say, Tammy, you'd be great at that. Maybe the people are like, oh, you're writing a book? Really?
Yeah.
Other people's opinions may help you. They may not. You have to, though, have that conviction of your own. And there were times when I was putting ceilings on myself, but there was also times when I was moving forward and I wasn't giving myself the credit to do so. I wasn't appreciating what it took to do that. While I had been hesitant to go to university, once I then made the decision, I went all in and I did it. And before I moved there, I drove up there and I went to every single retail store and asked for a job because I knew I needed a job. And I got one before I moved. I did things intentionally, but I'd skip over those things and focus on the things that felt really scary and that would paralyze me. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I'm still a work in progress. I think we all are. It can be really hard sometimes to keep pushing. And we often look to others to either support us. And that's why coaching is so powerful, to have someone that's invested in you and in your corner and is there as a sounding board and an accountability partner and a space for you to dream bigger. Yeah. And I continue to be coached in an array of spheres in my life because I feel being a coach isn't enough. We all need a coach, regardless of whether we are a coach ourselves or regardless of what we do. So yes, I learned the hard way, that my first instincts of saying no sometimes to myself, to things that I wanted, were not doing me, were not in my favor. I had to start saying, yeah, I'm going to try that.
Yeah.
Instead.
Yeah. I'm glad you did. So prep, push, pivot. Tell us all about it.
Oh my goodness. So Prep, Push, Pivot is a career coaching guide for underrepresented women in the workplace. It's the book that I wish I'd had at so many stages as I was not just starting my career, but also in the middle phases of my career when I probably felt more lost in the middle phases of my career than I did even at the beginning, when I was after becoming a parent and looking at my peers and feeling like everyone was accelerating fast and I wasn't anywhere where I wanted to be. And also just so many moments when I tried to negotiate my salary and it hadn't worked, or I'd wanted a promotion and I didn't get it. There were so many things when you look at someone's bio and you see all the great things, and there's so many things I'm proud of, but oh my goodness, Tammy, there's way more things that didn't happen the way that I wanted them to, or didn't happen at all for me. Yeah. And what I learned from navigating those steps, but also as a coach, there were so many recurring themes that I heard from other individuals who were not in the same professions that I had worked through. They were in an array of different fields, but so many recurring themes. And so Prep, Push, Pivot is divided into 3 sections. It opens with making sure that you know your worth, no matter what stage of your career you're at, whether it's the early stages, the middle, if you're senior, knowing your worth matters, and especially knowing your worth if it's not being reflected back at you, and how you can anchor your career values. And your career values are going to change over the course of time. There might be some consistent themes that matter to you and that make you who you are, but how you work and how you do your work and what you're reaching for is going to change over moments in time. And It's really important for us to do. It's almost like doing your own performance review on a regular basis, not just in terms of what you are doing well, but what you want to let go of and what you want to do more of.
And it sounds like it's also about knowing not just knowing what you can do, but knowing what you want to do, knowing who you are from a values perspective too,
Yes,
right?
before you even begin to layer on top what you're reaching for professionally, and knowing about what your non-negotiables might be for the moment that you're in right now, but also just in terms of your bigger picture. It has a section that, of course, is about pushing forwards. If you're looking to earn more, if you're looking to take that next step, what you need to do to be your own best advocate, but also what you need to ask for or what you need to put in place, that your foundations are as strong as possible. And then Pivot talks not only about how you might make a incremental or very sudden career change, if that's something that you're wanting to do, but also how you can be pivotal to the advancement of others, even while you are building, even while we're building, we can be pivotal to others. And I think that is so important, and paying it forward is a principle that is incredibly important to me. And then the book ends with what I call the Dream Bigger Career Toolkit, which is a place you can go back to quickly if you're working on a resume, or if you're thinking about your career commitments, or if you're road mapping your next steps. And it has resources and tools to help you that you can dip into when you need those.
And so, and this is really geared towards underrepresented women. So are there particular approaches that you suggest, or exercises that you offer?
Well, I mentioned earlier about the statistics show just how the landscape is so different for women of color in the workplace. When you look at what we earn on the dollar compared to white men, and that's segmented regardless of industry sector and regardless of education and regardless of levels of expertise, it's horrific. And even before the pandemic, it had been projected by the World Economic Forum, it could take over a century to close the gender pay gap. And that's with legislation that has been in place for decades that's meant to promote equal pay. We're still falling fast. And then when you look at the opportunity gap in terms of when you're looking at, the C-suite and the VPs and the SVPs at companies, and when you look at the lack of representation for women of color, it's just jarring. And so here's the thing, more often than not, we're working in a sphere where when we look up, we don't see people that look like us. And we're not just the onies where we work. We might be the onies in our networks, in our communities. And so it's so hard, Tammy. It's so hard. And the time will come for all of us at some point where we hit a wall because we're exhausted. And what is also even harder is when we do make it, however you define making it, whether it's publishing your book, getting the job, getting the promotion, negotiating the salary, we don't command the same respect once we've made it, once we've gotten where we want to be. It's not the same. And so this becomes so hard because a lot of those things are maybe not visible to anyone else. They might not even be fully tangible, but they impact us. They impact us. It's not easy to have these conversations at work. It's not easy to have these conversations with a manager. It's not easy. We don't all have a mentor. We don't all necessarily have a sponsor that's been an advocate for us. And if we do, if that person leaves, we have to start over. That said, there are people, I've had a number of white men read this book and say, oh my goodness, Octavia.
I was thinking that it sounds like, and I promise I'm going to get my hands on your book. It sounds like this book really could be instrumental for, clearly currently working professional, underrepresented women in general, I think, because what you're speaking to, and I don't want to just, put broad brushstrokes over this, but I can appreciate that there are even men who would find this useful.
Yes. A lot of people have read this who are leading teams or aspire to lead others, and have, while they were reading it with that lens, there were things that they also want to apply to their careers. Because as a coach, I coach all genders, all backgrounds, and whilst I'm very passionate about making sure to support underrepresented professionals, how that manifests in terms of the work that I do. My work can be so broad in terms of working with leaders and teams and companies in terms of providing programs that they can leverage. And so I am very committed and invested in that space. But as a Black woman also, I know how it can feel, but I also know that not everybody's journey is the same.
No.
Not everybody's journey will be the same as mine, or be the same as yours reading, or be the same as anyone else's. And so I very much believe it's important to meet people where they are, and to not make assumptions.
Right.
And to make that investment and commitment to help people grow and move forward.
And what I think what you're also saying is there's got to be some element of ownership on their part to step into the process if they want, even though it may not be of their making.
Yes, we have to be our own best advocates.
Right.
We have to be. Some of that might be innate in us. Some of it might be having to have conversations we've never had before. Often when I'm coaching people, and I don't know if it's the same for you, Tammy, people often say to me, I've never said this out loud before.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, sure.
Because there aren't many times we have in our career where we have times to think and reflect and to say or to explore what we really, really, really want. Typically that happens when we're making really important decisions, right? Perhaps in terms of what we might be applying for or what we're reaching for next. It's very rare that we might have someone who actually just sits us down and says, hey, Tammy, how are you?
Yeah.
What's working for you? What isn't working for you? What do you want to reach for next?
Right. And those are the kinds of questions I'd love to see more and more bosses asking their direct reports, their employees. And yet it seems like everybody's so busy running, on their hamster wheels.
They are. And here's the thing, Tammy, I noted from my time, working in corporate America, people often aren't shown how to be good managers.
No, that's true. That's very true. It hasn't been modeled.
It's not been modeled. The role models that maybe are the benchmarks for success might not also have the strongest attributes when it comes to managing people. And then the pressures that so many people are facing in terms of the economy, in terms of reductions in force, in terms of resources, in terms of the way that we're working, the deluge of work, the amount of meetings we have to have, it makes it even harder, even if you have the intent.
Yeah. No, it's true. Very true.
Yes, it's a lot. Work is work, right?
It is. And yet, if you can find a way to combine, finding your way through to advocate and find that place where you feel like you are getting your worth, or I don't know how to say this exactly, but to find that place where you feel that you're at peace, that you've found the right place for yourself, and whatever that is, and that you are making a difference in the way that you want to, and that you can I think what I was appreciating what you were all saying is being pivotal for others too. That I think there's something empowering about that, being pivotal for others and not trying to do it all alone. And I know that your book is written for a lot of people, and perhaps especially for those who may not have access to all the resources to empower themselves, or to hire a coach, or have access to certain types of supports, but they could have your book in their hands and that could get them started, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because, building your career, it's the most valuable, but it's the most personal investment you will ever make.
I agree. You're preaching to the choir here. I agree. So, Octavia, we could go on and on. I would love to, and we have to wrap up here. So what is the best way for people to find you and reach out?
Oh, so you can find me at my website, octaviagoredema.com. And if you wanted to read the first chapter of Prep Push Pivot, you can do that via my website.
Oh, wonderful.
So definitely head there. And you can also connect with me on LinkedIn. If you listen to this episode, please reach out on LinkedIn. Don't just follow, hit connect.
Yes.
I'd love to connect with you.
Wonderful. That's very generous. So final question. And there'll be lots of links in the show notes. So there's lots of other ways to follow Octavia's work. So a lot of people listening are probably hanging on your every word, thinking, how do I do that? Well, go buy her book. And if somebody is considering their next move or what to do next or how to get there, what would be a key piece of advice you might give them to get started?
I would say, think about what are 3 next steps that you want to either explore further or would move you closer. And then how are you going to reward yourself for those 3 steps? Not the end journey.
Right.
Just for making those steps. And the other thing I would also say is be really intentional about tracking your progress with whatever you're doing, whether that's in your day-to-day work or towards that next goal that feels out of reach. Track what you're doing. Make time at the end of each week just to reflect. And even if it's just one thing, write it down because you're going to forget. We're so focused on what we haven't done, on what we're trying to do, and maybe we cross things off our to-do list. It's really important to remember what we've accomplished. Circle the thing that maybe mattered the most or made you smile or that was important for your team or your work. Do it. Keep it in a dedicated place. Don't wait until you have to update your resume, until you have to prepare for your performance review or you're trying to scramble and remember all the things that you've done. Don't do that. And it's important to celebrate your progress yourself as you go.
Yeah. Great advice. Octavia, thank you so much for your time today. And I can't encourage people enough to check out Octavia's book, Prep, Push, Pivot. Check it out. I think it's going to be flying off the shelves. I know it's been out for a while, but check it out. Thank you so much for being here today. It's been a pleasure to have you.
Oh, thank you so much, Tammy.
I hope you enjoyed my interview with Octavia Goredema. It was so interesting to speak with her and learn about her early life, her transitions, and current professional endeavors. What is your key takeaway from our interview? If you are interested in any of the resources mentioned in today's podcast, you can find them in the show notes on my website at tammygoulerloeb.com/podcast. Just look for episode 220. Are you anticipating your next professional move? Check out my award-winning book, Work from the Inside Out, Break Through 9 Common Obstacles and Design a Career That Fulfills You. It's available through my website, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, or through your local library. If you were inspired by this episode with Octavia, please share it with your friends and colleagues, and please do subscribe so you don't miss next week's show. Remember, subscribing is always free. Are you enjoying the podcast? I'd love to read your written review on Apple Podcasts. It's easy to find. Go to my website, tammygoulerloeb.com/podcast. Click on the Apple Podcast button and follow the instructions provided there. You can also help to sustain this podcast by buying me a cup of coffee. Go to buymeacupofcoffee.com/TammyGL. Since this podcast is self-funded, I would so appreciate your support. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, it's never too late or too impossible to increase your sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in your work and other meaningful activities. Let me know how it's going for you. I'd love to hear from you. Bye for now.
Thank you for listening to the Work from the Inside Out podcast. For more information,
You can find us at www.workfromtheinsideout.com.